Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? A loss, a new path, or an awakening that forced you to rewrite your life? Pivot Point is a podcast that explores those stories. I'm Nick Michael. We'll dive into how pain can spark growth and how crisis leads to clarity. Subscribe to Pivot Point today. Welcome. This is Pivot Point, Strategy for Change. My name is Nick Michael. Let me ask you something that might hit close to home. Have you ever watched a man you love, your husband, your father, your son, your best friend, slowly sink into himself? Maybe you've seen the signs, the irritability that seems to come out of nowhere, the drinking that's gotten heavier, the way he brushes off every conversation with fine when you can see in his eyes that he's absolutely not fine. Or maybe you're a man listening right now and you recognize yourself in what I'm describing. You're the one who's been telling everyone you're okay while you're drowning inside. Tonight, we're going deep into one of the most dangerous patterns affecting men across every culture, every age group, every socioeconomic background. The devastating tendency to delay, avoid, or outright refuse mental health support. And I want you to understand something crucial right now from the start. This isn't a lecture about what's wrong with men. This is a conversation about a system that has failed men, about the invisible rules that have been programmed into boys from the time they could walk, and most importantly, about the concrete, practical strategies we can use right now to change this trajectory. Here's the stark reality. The fact that should shake us all awake. Men die by suicide at nearly 4 times the rate of women in the United States. Men account for roughly 78 to 80% of all suicide deaths. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about fathers, brothers, sons, partners gone because the pain became unbearable and asking for help felt impossible. But suicide is just the tip of the iceberg. Below the surface, there's a massive crisis of untreated depression, anxiety disorders, masked by anger, relationship breakdowns, substance addiction, spiraling out of control, and men who literally are dying earlier because chronic stress and untreated mental health issues are destroying their physical health. This isn't about weakness. I need you to hear that. This is about a cultural programming so deep, so insidious, that it makes vulnerability feel like social suicide. It makes asking for help feel like admitting you've failed at being a man. Tonight, we're going to dismantle this. We're going to talk about why this happens, what the real costs are, and most crucially, how to actually reach the men in your life who need help but don't know how to ask for it. Let's start. To understand why men avoid help, we need to go back to the beginning, to childhood, where the rules get written. From the time boys are toddlers, they receive thousands of tiny messages about what it means to be male. These messages come from parents, teachers, coaches, other kids, media, everywhere. And they all add up to what researchers call the man box, a rigid set of rules about acceptable masculine behavior. The rule sounds familiar because we've all heard them. Boys don't cry. Man up. Don't be. Handle it yourself. Winners don't quit. Real men are tough. Don't show weakness. Now, here's what's insidious about this. These aren't just casual suggestions. They become the framework through which men evaluate their own worth. Stepping outside the male box, showing vulnerability, admitting you're struggling, asking for help, triggers a deep primal fear of social rejection and humiliation. Think about it this way. If you spent your entire life being told that showing emotion is weakness, that needing help means you're less than, that your value as a man depends on your ability to tough it out alone, what happens? When you're genuinely struggling, when your anxiety is so bad you can't sleep, when the depression makes getting out of bed feel impossible, when your marriage is falling apart, you don't reach out. You push it down. You tell yourself to man up. You handle it alone. Or rather, you try to handle it alone. And you do whatever it takes to cope, to find the answers. And the one thing you don't do is admit vulnerability. So let's talk a little bit more about the next step. The next step is the psychology. Where does this all come from? There's a phenomenon called restrictive emotionality, essentially the learned inability to express feelings. But it goes even deeper than not expressing feelings. Many men develop what's called alexithymia, literally the difficulty identifying and describing emotions at all. If you can't name what you're feeling, if you were never taught the vocabulary for internal emotional states, how are you supposed to say, I'm depressed, or I'm having anxiety attacks? You can't articulate the problem, so you just say, I'm fine, and hope it all goes away on its own. This is why so many men present with what looks like anger, irritability, or physical symptoms rather than saying, I'm sad or I'm scared. The emotional literacy simply wasn't developed. The masks that men wear go untreated. Pain actually shows up. The dark side comes forward. So what does it look like in real life? Because men who are suffering rarely look like what we think. Honey, I think I'm having a depressive episode and I need support. Instead, they come home silent, withdrawn, remaining to themselves, staying downstairs in the basement, in the garage, snapping at the kids over nothing, pouring another drink, and stare at their phone for hours. Or they throw themselves into their work, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, becoming a workaholic because staying busy means not feeling. The work becomes both escape and identity, and if you suggest slowing down or getting help, they react defensively. I'm providing for this family. What do you want from me? Here's what is untreated. Mental health struggles actually look like in men. The anger mask. Depression in men often presents as irritability, rage, or constant frustration. Your partner picks fights over trivial things. Your dad has a hair-trigger temper. That's not just being an a-hole. That's often undiagnosed depression wearing a socially acceptable masculine mask. The substance solution. When you can't talk about your pain, you numb it. Alcohol becomes the nightly escape. Maybe it's weed, painkillers, cocaine, whatever is available. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, men are twice as likely as women to meet criteria for alcohol dependence, and research shows a direct correlation between delayed help-seeking and substance abuse as a coping mechanism. The isolation pattern. Men withdraw. They stop returning calls, skip social events, ghost their friends. They tell themselves they prefer being alone, but really, they're protecting themselves from having to pretend they're okay or risk someone seeing through the facade. The physical manifestation, chronic headaches, digestive issues, back pain, persistent fatigue, sexual dysfunction. These are often how the body screams what the mind won't say. And here's the terrifying part. Untreated mental health issues don't just feel bad, they destroy your physical health. The Journal of American College of Cardiology have demonstrated that chronic depression and anxiety significantly increase the risk for cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, and earlier death. We're talking about 30 to 40% increased risk of coronary events in people with untreated depression. Your mental health isn't separate from your physical health. They're completely intertwined. That chest pain, those heart palpitations, that chronic high blood pressure, often they're connected to the anxiety and stress you're refusing to address. The escapism addictions. When reality becomes unbearable, men seek escape. For some, it's porn. Hours every day, escalating to more extreme content, creating a secret life that deploys and destroys intimacy with real partners. For others, it's gambling, sports betting, online casinos, the adrenaline rush that temporarily makes everything else disappear. Or gaming, 12-hour sessions where you can be a hero in a virtual world while your real life crumbles. A 2019 study in the Journal of Behavioral Addictions found that men are significantly more likely to develop behavioral addictions, gambling, gaming, porn, as coping mechanisms for underlying mental health issues. And these addictions dramatically increase isolation and relationship breakdown. And then there's the ultimate escape, the one we don't want to talk about, but absolutely must. Suicide. Men complete suicide at rates nearly 4 times higher than women, and one of the most consistent findings is that the suicide research states the vast majority of men who die by suicide never received mental health treatment. They suffered in silence until the pain became unbearable, and they saw ending their life as the only way out. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention reports that middle-aged white men have the highest suicide rate, and that firearms account for 51% of male suicide deaths, which tells us these are often impulsive decisions made in moments of acute crisis by men who have no support system in place and no skills for managing overwhelming emotions. The concrete barriers. Why getting through the door is so hard. Okay, so we understand why men are socialized to avoid help, but let's get specific about the actual barriers that show up when a man is considering therapy or counseling. Because if we want to help the men in our lives, we need to understand what they're fighting against inside their own heads. The shame factor. Shame is the absolute killer here. Shame says if people knew I was in therapy, they'd think less of me. Real men don't need therapy. I should be able to solve my own problems. And here's what makes shame so powerful. It feeds on secrecy. Men hide their therapy appointments, lie about where they're going, and if they do tell someone, they downplay it. It's not a big deal. It's just checking some things out. Research on self-stigma shows that men experience significantly higher internal stigma about mental health treatment than women. They internalize the cultural message that seeking help means they're defective, broken, or weak. If you're a man listening and you felt like that crushing feeling that going to therapy means admitting you failed at being a man, I want you to hear this. That feeling is not truth. That's programming. That's the man box talking. And it's literally killing men. The judgment factor. Male therapist dynamics. Well, here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Many men struggle specifically with seeing a male therapist. I've seen this firsthand. Because of competition, comparison dynamics, there is an unconscious question running. Is this guy better than me? Is he judging me? Does he think I'm pathetic? Does he think there's something really wrong with me? The psychology here involves what's called projection. Men project their own harsh self-judgment onto the therapist and then defend against that imagined judgment by being guarded, minimizing their problems. I've seen this oftentimes over and over again in just about every male patient I have worked with. Some men actually prefer female therapists because they feel less judged, but others feel uncomfortable being vulnerable with women for entirely different reasons related to gender dynamics and socialization. The something's wrong with me fear. There's a pervasive belief that going to therapy means confronting and confirming that you're broken, defective, or mentally ill. And in a culture where mental illness is still heavily stigmatized, that feels like a permanent mark against you. Men worry, will this go on my record? Will my employer find out? Will my kids be embarrassed? Will people think I'm crazy? Will people think there's something really wrong with me? A 2020 study in the Journal of Psychology of Men and Masculinities found that concerns about being labeled mentally ill were one of the top predictors of men avoiding mental health services, even when they were experiencing severe symptoms. The concrete thinking trap. Here's something crucial to understand about how many men approach problems. They think concretely and solution-focused. They want a specific problem with a specific solution. I lost my job. I need to get a new one. My girlfriend left. I need to find a new partner. I'm having panic attacks. Tell me how to make them stop. And here's what happens. Once that concrete problem gets partially resolved, they get a new job, they start dating someone, the panic attacks reduced, they think, okay, problem solved. I don't need therapy anymore. Won't be seeing you again. Thanks a lot. Maybe I'll call you. They don't see the value in the deeper work. Understanding why they keep choosing unavailable partners, addressing the core anxiety that causes panic attacks, processing the underlying depression that contributed to losing the job in the first place. If you're working with a man in your life who's in therapy, this is so important to understand. He might want to quit after 3 sessions because got what I needed, everything's fine now. He doesn't yet see that those concrete problems are symptoms of deeper patterns, and addressing those patterns is what prevents the problems from just recurring in different forms. The external pressure versus internal motivation. Research consistently shows that when men do enter therapy, it's often because someone else pushed them, a spouse issued an ultimatum, an employer mandated it, a judge ordered it as part of probation, a parent threatened consequences. A study in the American Journal of Men's Health found that men were significantly more likely to enter treatment due to external pressure rather than internal recognition of need. And this affects their engagement. They show up physically, but not emotionally, but not committed. They sit in the therapy room with arms crossed, literally and figuratively treating it like an obligation to get through rather than an opportunity. What actually works? Meeting men where they are. All right? We've diagnosed the problem. Now let's talk solutions. Real, practical, tested strategies for getting men to therapy, and just as importantly, getting them to actually engage once they're there. Reframing the entire conversation. Stop calling it therapy. Stop framing it as dealing with your feelings. That triggers the alarm, that triggers the man box alarm. Instead, use language that aligns with masculine values. Performance optimization, executive coaching, leadership development, strategic life planning, stress management training, sleep performance specialist, relationship skills coaching. This isn't being manipulative, it's being strategic. You're describing the same thing using language that doesn't activate shame and resistance. If your partner is stressed at work, I found a performance coach who works with executives on high-pressure decision-making. Want to check him out? If your friend is going through a divorce, my buddy worked with a divorce transition specialist who helped him figure out his next chapter. Got his contact info if you want it. If your dad is struggling with anger, there's a veteran-specific program that teaches emotional regulation techniques. Heard it's really practical, and it would be useful for you. Notice the framing. It's goal-oriented, skills-based, and presented as enhancing performance rather than fixing brokenness. Start with the concrete, the physical problems. Don't lead with how do you feel or tell me about your childhood. Start with the tangible. How's your sleep scale? On 1 to 10, how's your sleep? How many drinks are you having per night? Is the anger causing problems at work or at home? Are you having physical symptoms, headaches, chest pain, digestive issues? These are safer entry points. They're concrete, measurable, and less threatening. And here's the thing. Once you start addressing the sleep, the drinking, the anger, the feelings, and the deeper issues naturally emerge. So explain the psychology. This works because it bypasses the emotional vulnerability barrier. A man can't say, yeah, my sleep is garbage, maybe a 3 out of 10 without feeling like he's admitted weakness. He's just reporting data. And when the therapist or doctor says, okay, let's improve on your work, it feels like solving a problem, not exposing vulnerability. The emotional work happens organically as the concrete work progresses. Use male role models and success stories. Representation matters. Hearing another man, especially one he respects, talk about therapy normalizes it exponentially. Find examples he'll relate to. Athletes like Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, Michael Phelps, they've all talked about being in therapy, seeking treatment. In the military, share stories of veterans who describe counseling as tactical mental training. Business leaders, CEOs who credit executive coaches and therapists for their success. Entertainers, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, discuss mental health very often. If you're trying to reach a man in your life, send him a podcast episode, an article, or a video featuring someone he admires talking about in therapy. Let him hear it from a source he respects rather than feeling like you're nagging him. Make the first step ridiculously easy. The biggest obstacle is often just logistics and overwhelm. I don't know where to start. I don't know who I can call. I don't have time to research therapists. So remove those obstacles. Do the research. Find the 3 to 5 therapists who specialize in men's issues or his specific concern. Make the list concrete. Include names, websites, whether they take his insurance, what their specialty is. I can't tell you how often the first person to call me is the partner, the mother, the aunt, the sister, someone in a man's life. It's often a female contacting me and saying, I'd like you to see my partner or my son or my brother. Often that's the road to getting someone into therapy. Offer to make the first call. I'll call and ask the intake questions. You just have to show up for the first appointment. Schedule it strategically. Make it easy right after work, during lunch, a telehealth, from home. Make it as easy as you possibly can. If you're a partner trying to get your husband into therapy, don't make it a conversation about his deficiencies. Make it about team problem solving. Hey, we've been struggling with whatever the issue might be. I found someone who specializes in exactly this. I made us an appointment for couples coaching next Thursday at 6. I'm going to be with you. Notice, it's framed as a team effort. It's already scheduled, removing the decision fatigue. And you're going together, removing the isolation and shame. Address the stigma head on with facts. Sometimes you need to confront the mental blocks directly. Use research and statistics. Did you know that untreated anxiety increases your risk of heart disease by 40%? Going to therapy isn't about feelings, it's about literally preventing a heart attack. Studies show that men who address mental health issues have better relationships, better sex lives, and actually perform better at work. This isn't weakness, it's performance enhancement. The suicide rate for men is 4 times higher than women, and 75% of men who die by suicide never got treatment. I need you to be one of those who gets treatment. Make it clear, concise, straight to the point. Express your fear, your concerns, your worries. The fact is that emotional resistance, if a man is stuck in and is a typical traditional real man, he's going to be completely oppositional. If a man is stuck in real men don't need help mode, hit him with the reality real men are dying because they didn't get help. Once they're there, how do you actually engage men in treatment? All right, let's say you've actually gotten a man through the door. Either you've helped someone in your life get there, or you're a man who's finally made that first appointment. Now what? Because here's the thing, showing up physically isn't enough. We need to talk about how to actually engage, how to get past the defenses, how to make therapy actually work, rather than just being a chore you endure. Next is the reality check. You can lead a horse to water, but doesn't mean they're going to drink. You've heard that expression. Well, too many men approach therapy exactly like that. Resistant horses. They show up because someone made them. But they still sit there with arms crossed, giving one-word answers, watching the clock, mentally checking out. And then they leave saying, see, therapy doesn't work. It's a waste of time. If you're a man listening who's been dragged to therapy, I get it. Every part of your socialization is screaming that you shouldn't be there. But you need to make a choice. Are you going to waste everyone's time and money going through the motions, or are you actually going to try? I tell spouses, I tell parents when they contact me, just get them into my office. I will take it from there. Because the truth is, therapy only works if you participate. It's not something done to you. It's something you do with the therapist as a guide. The next reality check is shame and embarrassment. Shame and embarrassment will show up. Let's just name it. The first few sessions might feel embarrassing. You might feel awkward. You might feel like you're failing at being a man just by sitting in that chair. That's normal. That's the man box programming trying to protect itself. It doesn't mean therapy is wrong. It means you're challenging some deeply ingrained beliefs. Think of it like starting at the gym when you're out of shape. Yeah, it's uncomfortable at first. Yeah, you feel weak compared to where you want to be, but that discomfort is part of growth. You push through it and it gets easier. Therapy is emotional and mental conditioning. The first sessions are like your first day at the gym after a long absence from working out. It may be awkward. It may be humbling. It is absolutely necessary. Next, the next reality check is dealing with a male therapist. If you're seeing a male therapist, you're feeling competitive, judged, or defensive. That's your stuff coming up. And it's actually really useful information. Notice it. Name it. Maybe just internally at first, naming it and noticing it. Say to yourself, I'm feeling like he's judging me right now. And then, this is the brave part. Tell him, I'm noticing I feel defensive right now, like you're judging me. Good. That's not weakness. That's actually high-level self-awareness, and it's courage. It takes a lot of courage to sit in the chair and speak to someone. It takes a level of vulnerability. It takes a level of inspiration or desperation sometimes. And here's what's powerful. Saying it out loud breaks the projection. Often, the therapist will respond with something like, I'm not judging you at all. What makes it feel that way? And suddenly, you're doing real therapeutic work, exploring where that feeling comes from, how it shows up in other relationships, how it's been protecting you, but also limiting you. Reality check number 4, moving past concrete problem solving. Remember how we talked about men being concrete thinkers who want specific solutions? That's a great entry point, but you can't stay there. Yes, start with, I need to stop having panic attacks, or I need to figure out my career. But when the therapist starts asking you about your childhood, your deeper patterns, your beliefs, don't shut down. Here's why that matters. If you just address the surface problems without understanding the pattern, you'll keep recreating the same issue in different forms. You get a new job, but end up burning out again because you haven't addressed your workaholic patterns and fear of being seen as inadequate. You find a partner, but end up in the same dysfunctional dynamic because you haven't examined your attachment style and relationship blueprints. The panic attacks reduce but morph into different physical symptoms because you haven't learned to process emotion and stress differently. The deeper work isn't optional, it's how you actually change the pattern rather than just managing the current crisis. I got what I needed. I don't need to continue anymore. This is the premature termination. When men start feeling better, maybe the immediate crisis has passed. The concrete problem has improved. There's often an urge to quit. I'm good now. I don't need it anymore. We're good. Thanks again. Maybe I'll call you. Listen, I get it. Therapy, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It can be expensive. And it is certainly going to be uncomfortable emotionally. When you're feeling better, it's natural to want to stop. But here's what I want you to consider. Why are you really wanting to stop? Is it because you've genuinely done the work and built sustainable skills? Or is it because you're uncomfortable with a deeper territory the therapist is starting to take you to? Often, the surge and the urge to quit comes right when therapy is about to get to the real transformative stuff. The patterns you've been running from, the pain you've been avoiding, the vulnerability you've been protecting against. I urge you to stick with it. The discomfort you feel when your therapist asks about your relationship with your father, or about how you really feel underneath the anger, or about the fear you've been carrying, that discomfort is the edge of growth. Next, the 12-week commitment. I call it the 12-week commitment. What does that mean? Well, commit to 12 sessions. Doesn't have to be weekly sessions. It could be twice a month over a course of several months, but 12 sessions at minimum before making any decisions about whether therapy is working. Now, why 12? Because that's usually enough time to actually build rapport and trust with your therapist. It's enough time to move past the surface presenting issues. You'll be able to start identifying patterns. You'll learn more specific, practical skills. You'll begin to feel some real shifts. Don't judge therapy based on session 2 when you're still feeling awkward and defended. Give it a genuine, good effort, not a good try. Hate the word try. Trying is lying. Give it a good, honest effort. Your effort is everything. Don't be the horse dragged to water and not drink. Measure progress concretely if you need concrete metrics. And many men do. Track them. Track your sleep quality. Rate it 1 to 10 every week. Track your relationship conflict. How many fights per week? How many arguments? How many disagreements? How about your substance use? How many drinks per night? How about your work performance? Objective metrics if possible. Physical symptoms. The frequency and intensity show yourself the data that therapy is working. When you can see, I am sleeping better, I am fighting less with my partner, and my anxiety has reduced, I think, to about 60%. It's harder to convince yourself that therapy isn't doing anything when you can track your progress concretely. For partners, for family and friends, how to support without enabling avoidance. Think of it this way. If you're listening because someone you love is struggling, a husband, a father, a brother, a son, a best friend, this section is for you. Supporting a man through mental health struggles requires really delicate balance. You have to be compassionate and patient, but you also can't enable the avoidance. You have to encourage without nagging. Yes, I know I said it, nagging. You need to be firm about what you need without shaming him. This is hard. Let's talk about how to do it. So, do I use I statements about impact? Don't say, you need therapy, you're a mess, you're ruining everything. You're ruining our life. You're ruining our kids' life. Instead, I'm worried. I'm worried about you. I'm noticing you're drinking more, and it's affecting our relationship and the relationship we have with our kids. I need you to talk to someone because I can't watch you struggle. I can't watch you struggle like this anymore. See the difference? One is attacking and the other is shaming. The other expresses your own feelings and needs, and that's tougher for him to defend against. Do this. Connect behaviors to concrete consequences. If his avoidance is creating real problems, name them specifically and calmly. Your anger last week scared our daughter. I saw her flinch. That's not okay, and I need you to get help managing it. You've called in sick 3 times this month. If you lose your job, we're in serious trouble. We need you to address what's really going on. Your drinking is now at a level where I'm genuinely afraid of your health. I love you, and I can't stand by and watch you hurt yourself. Firm, compassionate, concrete consequences cut through denial. When you speak in generalities, I'm worried about your mental health, it's easy to minimize. But when you make it real about your behavior and how it's affecting your child, your finances, your physical health, it's much harder to dismiss. Do this, set boundaries, not ultimatums. Boundaries sound like, I'm not willing to stay in a relationship where there's unmanaged anger and no effort to address it. I need you to start therapy, or we need to separate a while for you to figure this out. Ultimatums sound like, go to therapy or I'm leaving you. Explain the distinction. Boundaries are about what you will and won't accept. Ultimatums are about controlling the other person's behavior. Boundaries come up from self-respect, not manipulation, and that makes them far more effective. That said, there are moments when an ultimatum becomes necessary, when safety is at risk or gentler approaches have been exhausted. But always start with boundaries when you can. Don't do this. Don't nag, criticize, or shame. Nagging only creates resistance. Did you call the therapist yet? You really should go to therapy. I don't know what's taking you so long. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just deal with your problems? Statements like that only reinforce shame, and shame is the fuel that keeps avoidance alive. Instead of repeating reminders, set a deadline with clear consequences. I need you to schedule a therapy appointment by Friday. If you haven't, I'll assume you're not taking this seriously, and I'll need to make some decisions about our living situation. It's direct, it's clear, and then you drop it until Friday. Don't do this. Try to be his therapist. You're not his therapist. You're his partner. You're his parent, or you're his friend. Those roles are incompatible with being his mental health provider. You can listen, support, empathize, but you can't fix. If you try, you'll end up exhausted, resentful, and stuck in power struggles that help no one. What he needs is a neutral third party, someone whose only stake in this process is his actual healing. Your role is to help him get to that person, not be that person. Do this. Celebrate small steps. When he makes that first appointment, attends that first session, it opens up another opportunity to improve your relationship. I'm proud of you for going today. I know that was hard. Thank you for trying. It means a lot that you're making the effort and taking this seriously. Don't mock. Don't say, finally, and don't minimize. Just recognize the courage it took. Do this. Be patient with the process. Therapy isn't a magic fix. He won't transform overnight. Progress is slow, messy, non-linear. There will be steps backwards, moments of resistance, maybe even attempts to quit. That doesn't mean it's not working. It just means that it is real and it is working when there's the urge to want to quit. Your job is to stay steady, to keep encouraging, keep holding boundaries, but let go of the fantasy that change happens on your time. And look, I know this has been very heavy, but hear this clearly. There is a way through. If you're the one struggling, you don't have to wait for everything to fall apart. You can turn toward help before it hits bottom. And if you're the one loving someone who's stuck in avoidance, remember, your care doesn't have to mean self-sacrifice. Real love sometimes looks like boundaries. Sometimes it looks like stepping back. What matters most is that no one faces this alone. Help exists, real effective human help, and reaching for it isn't weakness, it's courage. It's choosing to live. So if something in this conversation stirred something in you, then let that be a signal. Have the conversation. Make the call. This is Pivot Point, Strategy for Change. My name is Nick Michael. I look forward to next time.